So there's all these newfangled LED lighting setups. Do they play well with Nectar? Let's talk about it. Hey there! Bob from Oregon's Constant Gardener. Welcome to the OCG Fam Show to you, my YouTube buddies. What's going on? How you doing out there? Let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it. So, today, well, let me talk about the show in a bigger picture. I think the value of the show as far as, well, there's some entertainment value to it, and me, Scott, goofing around. But there's also an informational thing, and I think that's what most people come for here. And I think the value we give to that information is that we stay in our lanes. Because I don't know much about anything, but Scott is an expert on Nectar for the Gods. Probably knows more about it than anyone on this earth, maybe even Frank. But that's what he knows, and that's what he talks about. And if you try to get him to stray too far outside of there, he'll be a little circumspect. Like, that's not really my thing. But with regard to this topic, LED lighting, Scott is no expert, and I certainly am not, but he is around people that are at the highest level of growing, using all different kinds of equipment, and so I thought he had some value to add on the subject of LED lights in general, but more specifically how they may affect a nectar grow. I thought it was a great clip. I think you'll like it too, so watch the clip, and I'll talk to you after. Buds McKenzie. Hey, Bob. I have a great idea for a show topic. With the advancement in technology of LED grow lights, more and more growers are making the switch, and I myself am considering swapping to 1,000-watt HPS cool tubes for Gavita 1930E or 1700E. Have any nectar growers out there made the switch? Has making the change caused any issues such as mag issues? Will this change feed regimens? I think this is a great topic, and I rarely see it discussed, whether here on the tube, forums, or threads. Now, I know this is maybe a dumb question, but it was a good question to me. Like, you know, do you have any thoughts about lighting? But also, how does someone decide lighting, and does it really matter, I guess is what I'm getting with this question.
Well, I mean, I think if you asked me this question 2 years ago, I'd still be on the fence of, I'm waiting for a lot of failures to happen before I'm going to jump on board to this LED big game. But now I have a lot of farms that are on them. I know a lot of growers using them, and I mean, the proof's in the pudding. The results are there. They're definitely, they have made them work now. And you know, and traditionally, I've seen a lot of growers for many years that have had great success with it. It's just a very expensive lighting system that you're taking a risk on. So I get that narrative. However, so our test farm up in Portland and Sandy, they converted an entire room over to these Gavitas that he speaks of. And he's also testing Next lights in another space and doing side-by-sides. And yes, it changes the feeding schedule. That is a great point that we kind of need to look at that as we need to come up with an LED feeding schedule, what to look for because of LEDs, because the penetration of that power watt is so much greater with LED technology versus, you know, the gas light technology, like high pressure sodiums. It will be a game changer. What we do notice, and you know I can get a camera into this farm up in Portland to get a sense of the veg space, the bloom space, what's needed, the temperature differences, because a lot of times we've seen more failures at low temp rooms with LEDs than rooms that are running at like an 85 to 95 degree. They're tending to do much greater and more uptake of nutrition. The one thing we've seen mostly isn't really necessarily the mag issue. What we're seeing is starvation issues because we can't possibly feed them enough. And as we're pushing these plants, they're going to take it. And they're going to take it at a level like they've never seen before. So a lot of people that have had the mag deficiencies from seeing LEDs go in isn't because, they're deficient, and only because there's just not enough in the soil for the plants to access. So we're seeing just more of starvation rather than it's deficient because the plant is using the light differently than it has before. It's just eating it all.
Is it the specular nature of LEDs? Like when you look at when you take a regular flashlight and an LED flashlight and you point them out, it's like the LED one is not as bright. But when you point them at your eyes, the LED one is way friggin' brighter because it's like a focus point kind of thing. Is it penetrating the plant more, do you think? And it's giving it more...
that's the whole sense of it, is instead of penetrating 6 to 8 inches into the canopy, it's, feet into the canopy. And, about 10 years ago when we were just, few years open at the retail store before we were nationwide with Nectar, we had a local stage company that was getting into the lighting industry for cannabis. Just seemed like a smart idea.
Well, yeah, it's a booming industry.
Yeah, especially if you're a Hollywood lighting company, so those are going to be cheap. So this guy brought us over to their lab and their facility, and he was breaking out these diodes that were like 15 watt or 20 watt diodes that were made in America. They weren't the Chinese, blah 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 blah. I think the ones they're using now are like 5 watts or 3 to 5 watts. I don't know. I'm not an LED guy yet. But he had this block, and he's like, these are going to sit above. They have all this air cooling. The downfall of them, it has a 2 by 2 foot penetration square. I mean, we're talking a light board like this big.
You just couldn't get there with those.
You couldn't be in the same room with it.
Yeah.
They put it down on the floor, and they took a ream of white paper, just brand new white ream of paper right out of the thing, set it on top of the LED board, and then turned on the LED light, and you could see the outline of the LED light penetrating through a ream of paper. I'm going, my goodness, that is like serious penetration. You can do that with a high pressure. You can do that with an incandescent bulb. So that proved to me that there is penetration with this lighting. And now seeing these grows, holy bejesus, you can grow a much smaller plant and see way more production in the lower sides of these plants, or the lower half of these plants than ever before, just because that light is penetrating and there's no shading. I mean, they're not lacking it. Now, one thing we have seen, a lot of guys were using like metal halides for their veg lights because they're cheap, they run efficiently, and they do well with the blue spectrum. But when you take them from a high pressure or a metal halide situation or an LEC type situation and put them into this super high intense lighting of an LED, the plants just panic and freak out because they go from like this 50% energy to you get the sun plus.
I was on the Earth, now I'm on Mercury.
And they freak out. So the key is running them with the same lighting, veg and bloom. So if you're going to do this, you want a veg light that is an LED. You just want to dial it back and then slowly increase the intensity as you step into the flowering space. And you have to watch your feeding at the same time because, I just saw a post from Pig the other day going, prove me wrong, but when I put my truncheon in using these LEDs, it's hard for me to even get it to register after a feeding. So, he's feeding 14, 15, 1,700 parts per million. 2 days later, coming in, it's below 250 because they're just sucking it up as fast as you can put it in. So, you do have to change some stuff. You do have to be prepared. I do want to do some follow-up shows on it. I think that's a great idea. I know I can get that camera up there. I have a few farms that we can get on and do some FaceTime with that are also using the LEDs, and they can show us and speak to it, like what they see firsthand and how it's working. But the Next Light guys, I know Kevin back in Chicago, he works with Mosca Seeds and Next Light and SLF, and he promotes our stuff all over the pseudo all-right state of Illinois. I'm from Michigan. So seeing what they're seeing at Next Light and what Kevin sees with Nectar is a huge benefit to us because they're putting these things out there to see, how much more do we really need to be putting in as a food source for these plants when using these new advanced light systems.
Okay, what do you think about that? Informative, helpful, entertaining? What kind of lighting do you use? Are you thinking about using LEDs if you haven't? Have you used LEDs and had good or bad experiences with them? Let's talk about that in the comments and anything else you want to talk about. I love you. I'll see you there, and I'll see you tomorrow. The OCGFAM show is pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCGFAM show. See you tomorrow.